How do you deal with power in the boardroom?
Oh my word, if I said something here, it can destroy my career. Isn't that the truth? Why am I feeling like this aches so much? Did I feel that I was disrespected? Of course I did. Why am I giving so much power to this comment that I'm hearing? Why does it feel like there's an element of some truth in it I haven't necessarily been wanting to admit to?
Yeah.
I don't want to be there. I'd rather say, we tried this thing, it failed. Guess who made it fail? I always say to people, especially the ones who feel that they don't like confrontation, you're living your life as a lie.
I usually say they are visibly placed, labeled izinduna, and then there are the invisible ones who are not holding the title in the official sense, but hold the influence. And if you miss that, some of what you might achieve may be limited. You know, I'm very lucky that you said yes to me, Angela. I just thought when I texted you, I was like so happy. Welcome to Cheers to Failure.
Oh, thank you. It's because it's you.
I love that.
You
Thank
know, I
you.
love your work and I'm inspired by
Thank
you.
you.
So when you said,
come chat
to you,
yeah,
I then said, well, why not?
Yeah.
You know,
what is failure to Angela? Let's start there.
You know, it's interesting, Nonto, because my perspective on it is, and I actually had to tell you the truth, I had to go Google. Because I was like, what is it again? And I'm comfortable to say, for me, it means where you've had a set of expectations that are not met. And there are varying degrees and I guess a lot degrees of what's at stake that kind of pushes one to have different types of emotions relating to those expectations not met.
Yeah.
And so, I'm comfortable to say that that's how I understand it.
Yeah. Growing up, I love exploring how that definition has evolved with your maturity.
Yes.
And so take me back to Angela around the time when your parents' opinion and responsibility for you was heightened. Your early teens, late teens, early times in your career. What was failure then and how has it shifted?
Oh, that's a lovely place to start. I think the framing of my life was always around God. I come from a Christian home. And so a lot of the teaching was really on the basis of Christianity. And so some of those kind of foundational kind of steps, if I can put it that way, have grown up with me. But I think when I reflect on failure as a child, it was really around not meeting my parents' expectations. But I think I was very fortunate in that I realized that they were very different in that they saw me as a person, not as themselves. I often joke that I look at our school reports and I chuckle and I often ask my mother, how did you survive looking at such terrible results? And I think the consistent story for them was you are a person and we were joyous to the human being you are. And that they felt that was the job that they had to do to nurture that individual and help them grow. But obviously, as a child, you're not fully awake to that. You're always comparing yourself to other people. You're always looking to see whether mommy smiled or didn't, and you learn from how the siblings are being treated when something not quite expected happens and and there was that belt that gets taken out. So I think there is that element of it that grounds your perspective to how you relate to things not working out well.
I know you are a parent.
Yes, I am.
How do you deal and support your kids when things don't go the way they had hoped? What's the conversation in the car at a dinner table like?
Yeah. Nanto, I think life is so interesting that you're probably thinking it's about when somebody doesn't do well in a test. But I think for me, I think there are bigger, I'm very active in the autism community. Things can go horribly away from expectation. And I think the whole thing for me is really about what was your expectation and what happened. Maybe let me go back to my childhood story.
Yeah.
So I had gone to this private school, and I had, in my year, I'd gotten the highest mark in maths in my form. This is now end of year results. And I got the third lowest in Afrikaans. I literally failed like 30-something%. And I saw this kind of outcome, and I was distraught. I was crying all the way home. Got home, and my dad said, listen, I'm so not impressed. And I just I was so surprised. I thought he'd be sympathetic to all of this. And he said, this is not what it's about. Life is actually about both. What I'm interested in your character is the ability to deal with both. And interestingly, what I realized is that the maths, I hadn't fully exerted myself. I was naturally good at it. The Afrikaans, I had worked so hard and I had not succeeded. And he said, baby girl, it's about being humble. Humble to understand when you succeed. You have been gifted a lot. You've been given skills that sometimes are unmerited. Yeah? And you've been given circumstances that allow for that thing that you desire to happen. So don't get too big for yourself.
Sure.
Humble when you're successful. And in humility, be humble also. Because yes, there are other people gifted more than you in this thing. So go find that friend and who got an A for Afrikaans and sit with them and learn and find out how they did it. Instead of saying, not me. How dare you?
Yeah.
Who's supposed to be the one getting the 30%? So for me, it's always been, and I think that example, for me, I've taken throughout to nurture my children, to say, what is this person's gift? What I look for is the character. Have you exerted yourself? Have you not played around with opportunity? Have you tried the best that you can? Because we're all gifted so many in different ways. So to expect me to do as well as you do in what you do, Nonto, is unfair. And it should not be. Rather judge me on the basis of who I'm meant to be. Nurture that and allow me to flourish. Yeah.
I love the thought of, or the words in the conversation you had with Dad then, which was, if not you, then who? When you got the lower mark and you thought, why me? And this is a reflection I usually hear when the most unfortunate of life events have occurred. Like, God, why was I involved in an accident? God, why did I lose my husband? Why did I lose a loved one? And sometimes the answer does become, who was deserving? If, like there's almost a human way of having that posture that is like, I didn't deserve such a bad thing to happen in my life. Being a person that you are and your faith and your beliefs, how do you treat those dark moments? Do you ever feel tempted to say to God, why was my window broken?
Of course.
Why did I deserve it? And how do you get yourself out of that? Or do you stay, and how do you navigate that?
Of course I do. I ask him a lot. Where were you taking me? Why am I here?
Why did this little stone crack my windscreen when my car was just perfect?
Exactly. Yeah. And it wouldn't be an honest relationship if it wasn't like that. I think, though, what grounds me is the fact that, being a believer, I know that things work out for my good. I've got anecdotal evidence of that in my life. Yeah. And so I hold to that. And also, I wouldn't think it would be right that a life would be just about my expectations. I think I'd say over 80% of my life is not what I expected. And I think I've been redirected a lot. So if I had only, I guess my other kind of deep belief is that he's dreamt bigger than what I have dreamt for myself. So for me, when it doesn't quite work out the way I would like it, I sit down and I say, I know you've got something planned, but I'm not quite sure what it is yet. How about you show me? Because things in life almost daily do not work according to how Angela wants. Thank heavens. Some of it works out far better than I would have expected, and some disasters happen as well. The question, though, is where's my frame of mind? Because sometimes I think when things that happen unexpectedly and they're not, and there are, like I say, there are big ones, loss of, loss of jobs, loss of, expecting children to do well and they don't. I think for me, it's always this, that what is it that I'm chasing? Because I think sometimes we think we're too late for something. I actually think, you know what? I'm not late for anything. I'm fine right where I am. And I tell my kids this. Listen, if it means you have to repeat a grade because you did not exert yourself, you will repeat that grade. It's as simple as that. Will the world end? No, it will not. But hopefully you would have learned something. So for me, it's really just, where's your worldview? Who are you trying to impress? What are you? And for me, all those things get us caught up, because if something didn't happen the way I expected, then, Nonto is going to look at me in a particular way or whatever. I've tended to quieten those voices down a lot, because it really is about me and my circumstances and all this pivoting I've had to do. I've realized that actually no one really cares that much. It really is about just me in my own self, having to reconcile my own expectations and what is happening in my life.
I want to explore this thing called you're being redirected.
Yes.
And pivoting. And I want to ask you to share a moment that you were redirected.
Yes.
What the agenda in the program you had was not to be in that way, and you had to follow the redirection. What was it? How did you know you were redirected and didn't persist on pushing a certain way?
Sure, Nonto. Look, I've been very fortunate that when I became a CEO, I was very young. I was 32 years of age, and I became a CEO of an insurance company. And obviously, naturally, you then say, then the next step is a bigger role running an insurance company and a bigger role running an even bigger thing. And prior to that, I was actually in private equity. So I had done private equity. I had to leave because I felt I was too young to now be sitting and being asked to do BEE deals, and people would ask, who do I know? And I didn't know anyone.
What was your age around the time when you
said you were too young? It was about 28, 29.
Okay.
And I thought, you know what? I need to actually get some real skills running businesses and getting to know people, building a skill set. So I got out of that, and I thought I was going to run a coffee shop. And I then got redirected to go run an insurance company by a company that I had done a deal with in private equity. Was I the best person for the job? None of that dictates the fact that I was a skilled individual, that I was the best. It just shows, again, unmerited favor, skill set that combines people at the same point, seeing what you can do, seeing potential in you. And I actually got that job. Now, I did all of that work, and I thought, you know what, this is kind of, I'll get to the next phase and next phase. And you know what? I never did get to run that biggest company in the country, etc. what actually happened is that I got redirected back into ownership. So instead of going to, okay, I want to be
lateral move
lateral
up
move,
to the next senior,
it was
the
a
next
case
senior
of,
role,
and I realized, actually now what makes sense for me, because I love running businesses, love it. What I love doing is having ownership and running a business. And it was fantastic that, I was in a company like Hollard, which supports partnerships. And I ended up there. To somebody looking at this, they'd say, but that's stupid. Why don't you go for an even bigger job? That is not what I'd like. And I didn't even know that I wouldn't like that. Life changes.
Yeah.
And what suited me and what I hadn't even planned for that I got an opportunity to have was this. And so I think it's really, for me, this thing about trusting the fact that life will always offer you opportunities and also the downsides. And that the opportunities you get, enjoy them. See them as a gift for you to do something with. But when the other stuff happens, also remember that you've got it in you to actually come out. Find people who've been there before, learn from them, understand how best you can move out of it. And actually, sometimes I look at it, even in the moment, I'd say, this is too hilarious. If, the set of circumstances happening in that disaster, that you sit there and you say, how the hell did I get myself in this situation? Yeah. So I think for me, it's really just about, they say you can't run away from the work you have to do in yourself. I think the whole thing about dealing with failure and life issues is about really going back to the fundamentals of the work you have to do within yourself. Yeah.
I want to explore when the redirection happens.
Yeah.
You've set your career, you've got these plans that you as Angela have.
Yes.
God, I'm going to run this division, it's going to grow, I'll run multiple divisions or a bigger division.
Exactly.
And I make my way all the way up the ladder. I can imagine you, I'm going to say, dealing with, oh God, are you really redirecting me this way now? Am I really supposed to shift from here to there? Is ownership really the thing I'm meant to go to? Or do you phone someone? Are you in prayer for a month to get clarity? Like, what is it in your process in that time that helped you to say, okay, I am going to agree, actually. I'm going to move and follow. My ex-boss used to say, follow the river. Allow the water to go, because in direction is the water eventually leading to a dam, to an ocean. So just talk me through how you got to a place of, I guess, being settled with the decision, so that you can even share that decision with your peers at the time, with people whose voice you consider as guidance. Yeah.
I've been very fortunate to have an amazing set of very close, I'd call them advisors. I meet them on a monthly basis and we share deeply. And it's a bunch of people that are also in the same kind of situations. They're all CEOs. And I'm able to share in detail a lot of my thinking, my plans, and they're able to say, no, you're actually thinking wrong, or not even wrong, but they'll offer their perspective in terms of their learned experiences. So I've got that. So I think this whole thing of finding peers that you can trust, that you can lean on, is very important. I also think, my family setup is such that I've got a very close relationship with my siblings, and they're professionals as well and operate at a high level. So I'm able to gather from that. But I will tell you that nothing trumps the fact that I actually am prayerful about my situation. And I don't think God talks to me to say, okay, go do that, or go don't do that. But I do think you are given wisdom and you are given discernment to almost realize that actually, perhaps this is the way to go. I don't know how else to put it. It just feels like it is the right way to go. And how does this discernment and wisdom come? It comes from all the other experiences where you've learned, you've seen, you've made mistakes. You can't kind of graduate to being discerning about a very big decision when you fail to do the other ones that build up to that. And you would have had to not make the right decision to learn, hey, you know what? I actually am this type of person that requires this kind of environment. For example, I know myself. I'm that kid. You need to give them her tools. You need to allow her to do the work and run. It's like when you're coming in and wanting to take my tools, and I get very unsettled. So I need environments that are very big on giving me a sense of freedom to play and do what I need to do. I don't do well in environments that want to micromanage or want to have a kumbaya environment when I need to work. You just leave me alone. Let me do it with my team and we'll come back and tell you. So it's these things that you draw on as you find things that work or find things that, you know, where you're disappointed, where a boss, you realize I'm not getting on with this boss. And you sit back and you think, actually it's because we've got two different styles of doing things. And maybe actually we're not fitted together. At the time it feels painful, but actually it's a stepping stone to knowing ultimately that you actually do well in these types of environments. So for me, it's those three things. Having a prayerful life, having close people that I trust, that I can lean on. And I think sometimes we really underplay peerdom because we're so big at looking at the other people that are above. Obviously, those people I would consult. But I tend to find that in my life, the people who've been very helpful are peers who, I guess, have gone they've gone further than me. They've achieved more than me. And those are the ones that I want close by. I don't know if they're peers or not, but they're people I can relate to.
How do you establish trust and feel safe in that space? Because a lot of times, I know this for myself, that sometimes you're like, if I'm going to talk to 4 people, they might even go ahead of me and block that opportunity for me.
Exactly.
Or they might pull me down because I'm progressing further. How do you establish that trust and feel safe to be this transparent? Because you're saying what's beautiful is you are thoroughly transparent in that space.
So that relationship is actually governed by our set of we've got codes.
Okay.
You cannot disclose. You cannot. What I say to you can never come out. So it's an organization.
And that's been verbally agreed. It's not assumed.
It's not assumed. Okay. And I'm part of an organization called YPO.
Okay.
And it's an organization of CEOs worldwide, and that's what it is. And it's around helping people at that level cope with the issues that they're faced with.
Okay.
There's also, let's not forget, there are these close friends. I've got running mates where you talk and they've also been places and they offer that. So I think, it's important to have people that you trust, that you can talk to. And quite honestly, the people you can trust. Sometimes trust your instinct. Don't tell everybody your business and just because they've been ahead of you that you think they're going to help you. Sometimes it doesn't quite work that way.
Let's talk about a failure that you navigated, or a challenge.
Yes.
That was difficult at the time, and retrospectively, it's taught you the most about the Angela you are today.
Yeah. And let's say, instead of failure, let's say where expectations were different to the ones I wanted. So I have a kid who has autism. I'm A-type personality. In my life, I expected that, I'll have children, they'll go off and be this and be that and be the other. And for me, finding myself on that path where nobody in my family and my surroundings had been there was particularly testing, because you have an expectation of, this child will achieve this and, and get to this milestone, etc., etc. And this is where I find God is incredible, because he gave me the most incredible gift. It's not the path that everybody travels, but mine has flowers and rainbows and all sorts of things, which has actually helped me become a better leader. I think also a better human being, because it reframed my whole concept of rearing kids. That I see the person, I see my kids. The fact that they do what they do is an afterthought. Funny enough, the same way I feel about my kids is the way that my dad was and my mom were trying to demonstrate to me that, hey, we're looking at you,
the person.
We're not in the other stuff. It's the trinkets. It's really, and I mean, we used to get this speech when we graduated: you're not your degree, you're a human being. And we're going to measure you by how good a human being you are. We don't care whether you come here with all these titles and whatnot. What we're interested in is you. And so for me, this lesson had to come in other ways. And so for me, that's something that I reflect on. Look, there are days where you're like, oh, I wish, my son would play for a rugby team at a school, wherever, when you see the boys sing and whatever. But that was not for me, my path. My path is other things that other people never, ever get to see. So I think this whole thing, you can see where I'm getting at with the reframing of the mind and really kind of also questioning yourself. What is your truest belief? What is it that you're actually really chasing here? Because a lot of time, it's not about the thing in front of you. It's the thing you most desire. And you actually are holding on only to that thing. And you're saying, but why not this thing? When actually there's something completely different, but absolutely amazing. That's there to, I say, welcome the gift. Welcome the gift this moment is going to give you.
What did it teach you that you say has helped you become a better leader?
That people learn differently, that people have different skills, that there are times when we assume that we are normal, when actually there's nothing like that.
No normal.
And it's helped me pause a lot, especially now when we're dealing with mental health issues, where we're now fully aware of neurodiversity. For me, it's woken me up. I see it and I welcome it. So when somebody would say, well, maybe I'm not really great at public speaking or whatever, and you assume, it's just sometimes something you can train. I'm a lot more inquisitive to say, let's talk about it. What is going on? And sometimes you realize some of these things are not diagnosed. We're all neurodiverse. And so for me, it's helped me to actually show up better for my people, to say, hang on. This thing that you're talking about, let's just double click a little bit on it. How do we support you better? Understanding that this is your discomfort, So,
do you ever feel like, as a mom, especially as a mom, that you want to protect your child for the reasons of autism and almost create a perfect environment? So if he was, for example, to come to my space, are you anxious? Are you feeling like, oh my God, I must call Nontogozo so that Nontogozo knows that this is how you must behave around my child? These are the things you must avoid. These are the things you must put in front of them. Or do you I'm asking from a place of being overprotective and over being conditioning an environment too much, or in your stance, you trust that you will navigate the moment when the moment comes and your child will be okay.
Listen, I let it flow the way it needs to flow.
You
need to get to yourself. He needs to get to himself. I need to get to myself.
Okay.
I manage nobody. We arrive and we...
From when they were a child.
From when they were a child. We've been kicked out of movies. We've been... and all I've done is just say, you have every right to be here. Who said anybody else has a better right to be here?
Yeah.
No, so we just live.
Yeah.
And the people that I engage with, they have to live with that. And so for him, he rolls with the punches. And he understands that he has a place in this world and he has to make it work.
Yeah.
So, because the world will not necessarily shift for him.
And there are times you won't be there.
I won't be there.
Yeah.
And there are times when the world will shift for him because he makes, those, like it does for us. So I've had to say, well, you have autism, but hey, dude, you've got to deal with what we have here. And we joke about it a lot. I mean, fortunately with age and therapy and all of that, a lot can happen for a child in that situation. So we talk about it very candidly.
Okay.
To say, hey, listen, don't think I'm scared of you because you react like this to this thing. Get over yourself. And, so I think it's that attitude.
Yeah. I can see parents, I know this because they're parents who overprotect.
Yes.
How would you guide them? And they may be dealing with different challenges, but this idea of being I'm not going to show you in the term helicopter parent. Yes. But you see what I mean?
Yes.
Like just go, like the sponge must be like this, the pillow must be like that, the aircon must be like this, the egg must be boiled, over preparing, conditioning, protecting. How would you guide a parent who is maybe showing up that way?
Yeah.
And because I can imagine there are risks that they don't know, and they won't always be there for their children.
I think we parent the kid we have, Nonto, because my kid is one of the very different, many thousands of variations of being on the spectrum. Yeah. So every parent's child would show up in a different way. Some kids are not verbal. Some kids are verbal. Some kids need 24-hour attention, So I think every parent needs to, one, say, what circumstances am I dealing with? Face the reality that you're dealt and work with that. For some people, they have to be overly protective that way because the child can self-harm. But there are times when you realize, like with any child, this is being naughty, this is being...
this is manipulation. This is reality.
And I think because, I'm blessed with kids that one is on the spectrum and one not, you kind of see like, okay, you are trying your luck. But I think as a parent, you deal with the child you've got in the conditions that you find yourself with. But the one thing every parent understands, I think, to some degree, is that your own mortality is very much a present factor. And so you're having to prepare your child for living without you. And so for me, that's been a primary thing about raising my kids. It's like, and both of them, can you cook? Can you clean after yourself? Can you engage with people? Yes. Can you make requests? And those are things that I've worked on. But I think to your question, it's important that any parent deal with a child where they're at and deal with that child in a way that actually protects them and helps them become a better person. Look, with all of that comes the emotion, of I wish it was different and the mourning of what could have been. And it happens through all the stages of every child. It's not just kids with autism, it's every child. And so the question is, how do you as a parent navigate that in a way that actually does not destroy the child? Because sometimes it's just your expectations.
Yeah.
So for me, it's really
Yeah.
just that. I don't know if it
No,
answers
it
your
does.
question.
It does.
Not
It does.
just-
Let's talk about Angela in the boardroom.
Yes. Yes, please.
You deal with a lot of people, some more powerful
Yes.
than others.
Yes.
How do you deal with intimidation that might happen and people exerting their titles and personalities in a way that seeks to, I guess, be unproductive and intimidate versus be transparent, truthful, etc. How do you deal with power in the boardroom and the power that might make you maybe want to mute your voice a little bit? Have you ever encountered such, and how did you navigate it? Yeah,
it's such a difficult one because we don't talk about it enough. This whole thing of who you become. So there's you in your natural state when you're at home in your comfort zone and you can become fully who you are. There is the other you that shows up when you are in a group of other people, whether it's colleagues that are in the same team. And then there's you that comes up when there are other people that are more powerful than you, where decisions that get made can impact you. And I don't think we talk about the psychology of having to deal with this person that you are in all those environments. Because you get to a place where you know you're confident, you know you're sure of yourself. But in that moment where now you realize, oh my word, if I said something here, it's a career, it can destroy my career. You show up as a different person there. So there's that dynamic at play.
Yeah.
And so for me, what's been important to understand and navigate is what are the things that cannot absolutely shift in me that ground me as a person. Because the thing is, if you're sitting in a boardroom and you cannot really fully be yourself, it's a horrible kind of experience. It takes, there's a human dignity that kind of leaves you as a result of not actually being grounded in yourself. Yeah. So for me, this thing of building the core and really asking, am I living honestly with myself in this moment is such an important thing. Whether it's with myself, with my peers, or in the boardroom is important. So when I frame it that way, am I living honestly in this moment? And it's not about just wanting to make an impression or am I being honest? So if a conversation is being had and I'm not seeing that it's actually, they're missing something or I don't agree. One, you have to exercise tact. Sometimes it's not about talking in that moment. It's actually realizing, you know what, I can actually broach the subject differently somewhere else. Or if it does allow, yes, because sometimes in the boardroom there isn't time to sometimes have these extended conversations. Maybe it's a moment and maybe it's a colleague who probably can, you can better talk to them afterwards. You can refine the thinking afterwards. There's no point in me trying to make that point in the boardroom. I can certainly leave and chat to them afterwards. But it's about recognizing the honesty of my existence or the honesty of my contribution and thoughts in that moment and saying, am I doing it in this moment? Then everything else, honestly, I can't help you. Because the thing is, people will look at, the thing about life is you don't see yourself. I see you. I form impressions about you. I can only live. And I think it's probably age as well. You're like, I don't know how else to help you. You might think all sorts of things about me, but I can't. But I think what I can say is that over the years, I've recognized that having an honest conversation about what transpires is important, and finding the right moment to do that is key so that I can actually be in equilibrium.
Yeah. How do you deal with moments when you are disrespected? in that moment.
In the moment.
In the
And
moment,
it's happened.
in front of people or on your own,
Yeah.
but you're like, this is disrespect.
I know. And I wish I used to say to my mom, you didn't teach me to fight hard enough. Because it's always about see the other perspective, be the bigger person. I'm like, I don't want to be a bigger person. I also want to throw my toys.
Yeah.
But I've actually realized that I'm not too quick on that rebuff to actually, be on the same level as the insult. But what I will do is I will address it in some shape or form, whether it's afterwards or with the person. I'll find a mechanism to deal with it.
I want to ask you if you're comfortable, but not with the details you can share. Describe that scenario.
Yes.
And what was in your mind going home, planning to come back and address it, or letting it slide for an hour and then emailing. Just describe how you felt disrespected and how you tapped into your wisdom to address it, so that the person listening can be in your shoes.
Yes.
Because a lot of us are dealing with individuals who are very disrespectful, especially in corporate corridors.
Look, I think this thing happens in a subtle but intentional way. It's not sometimes somebody saying, hey, you're an idiot. They don't say it like that. So an example that I can think of is that, sometimes you deal in a situation, especially when you're a CEO, having to mop up where people don't see. And I think in this particular occasion, the numbers were not correct from finance. And those numbers not being correct, it took us a long time to prepare the deck that I needed to present. And unfortunately for me, the conversation went straight into the numbers and the detail of those numbers in the deck. And so it showed me up not having been fully prepared to engage on that level. But also, incidentally, on that occasion, I didn't realize that there was another conversation in play that was actually going to use that moment to kind of navigate towards a different path. And so the level of disrespect came when obviously I owned up to the fact that, you know what, I actually should have prepared better for this. And unfortunately, I didn't, and I don't have all the answers that I need to. But having said that, post the fact, the disrespect came when I was engaging with this one particular individual, and they said, well, by the way, I know my numbers, in passing. And I thought, well, isn't that the truth? Why am I feeling like this aches so much? One, let's not dismiss the fact that there is the truth in that. I did not know my numbers, and maybe this person does know their numbers. That's a one fact. The second thing is that the fact that they could say it is what was, for me, the humiliation. And I then reflected and I said, but why should it humiliate me? Because I know the facts and I obviously want to show up as well as I'd like to, but these things happen. And I think for me, fortunately, Nonto, I looked at the individual and I thought, clearly, there is something there. I don't know what it is. But for me, I was like, okay, I'm here for this thing and for this meeting to progress this way. I then said, ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth? You know your numbers so well. Then let's deal with this particular issue. So, and I think it's really, again, being honest in my moment. I did feel disrespected. I did feel, because I think people don't, and in business, they don't take into account all the other things that you've blocked, and they're looking at that one pivotal moment. And I was not about to say, well, it's because this, that, and the other. I took it. I said, you know what, you're right. I should actually show up a lot better than this. But did I feel the sting? Did I feel that I was disrespected? Of course I did. Did I feel that I had to now go and say, how dare you? There was no way. There's no point in that. They have to deal with their own level of who they are as a human being.
Yeah.
However, I have a choice. My choice was, I need this meeting to progress. I need for me to handle this in such a way that also she's giving me information that I now know who she is, right? Now I understand who I'm dealing with. I then said, okay, let's then carry on.
Yeah. Do you find it easy to coach Angela in the Angela moment when Angela is disturbed?
Yes, I do.
I'm like, come on, Angela. Step 1 is this. Step 2 is why are you touched? Step 3 is let it go.
Let it go.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting, Nonto. I think, and I don't know, when I'm talking to a 20-year-old, it's like, come on, be real. What are you talking about? But I honestly think the work that we do as individuals, we don't just grow up. I always say you have to teach. There's certain things you've got to ingrain in yourself and almost create resilience in yourself. Yeah. So of course, yes, because I've been in enough environments to know that, if I've got that meeting with this person that now, by the way, I respect and enjoy, I've got to actually see certain things through. I'm not shy to have the conversation, but it's always about appropriateness. What will serve me? How will this serve this whole thing? Yeah. And let it go. But I have been intentional with saying, actually, this relationship has to shift, because like I say now, we enjoy a healthier relationship. But that moment showed me, hey, something is amiss here. But I also, I have to say that there was a truth that stung that I needed to face. So when somebody's being disrespectful, what are they really being disrespectful about? Why am I giving so much power to this comment that I'm hearing? Why does it feel like there's an element of some truth in it, which I haven't necessarily been wanting to admit to? And so for me, that's my moment of saying, okay, so what does it mean? It means, Angela, you get back to your team and you tell them you're not going to be embarrassed like that again. Yeah.
How do you deal with being overwhelmed? When there are just
too many things.
Many irons in the oven, balls in the air, things to manage. Personal Angela, boardroom Angela, sister Angela, friend Angela. It's happening. How do you center yourself, prioritize, or stay under your duvet and just be like,
sometimes it's
God,
nice
I'm just going to cry this out.
Nonto, it's I'll bring you back to my faith. I don't think I have to do much to feel my worth. It's already paid for. And so the chasing is not a chase. It's actually, I love what you said. You enjoy what you do. You're in flow.
Yeah.
It's actually sometimes trusting that process. Look, I think we all juggle a lot. But I think for me, it's like, it's important, but is it important for me not to breathe? What is the price for this thing? And I think this is where, as individuals, it's different. I remember one of the people in one of the previous businesses I was in. She was like, Angela, give us something to aspire for. Buy like an expensive car. I was like, I don't want one. I don't need one. So for me, this being overwhelmed is against something. What is your expectation? My kids know I will not arrive in the kitchen in the morning to cook breakfast, and I'm not that mommy. Things are not going to be organized. You're going to have to sort yourself out, And so for me, this thing of being overwhelmed, sometimes, of course, I've got to get to work early. I've got to do things. I've got responsibilities. But those require planning. Those require
having the right team around you.
It's all the stuff that I've got to do. But when you talk about this being overwhelmed, it's a very strong word. And I tend to find when I'm out of balance like that, there's something else that is out of kilter with even my belief system. Why am I overwhelmed with my kids? Am I not trusting enough that they will actually go through life? They'll be fine. If I'm overwhelmed with work, and maybe a project is not going well, etc., am I putting in enough? Am I allowing stakeholders to become aware of what's going on? Or am I anxious that they'll find out and they shouldn't be? Like, what exactly is going on here?
What's creating
Yes, because I think ultimately, if I'm being honest and I say, this thing is not going well, and I engage with different people and they say, well, it should be going well. In fact, maybe you're in trouble for this or whatever, and there are repercussions for that, then I think that's okay. Like, I feel like that for me is okay than living in this thing where I'm hiding. I don't want to be there. I'd rather say, you know what? We tried this thing. It failed,
Yeah.
And guess who made it fail? Me. I'm so sorry. And this is what I've learned from it. This is what I think I can do differently going forward. And so I release myself from this thing where I'm creating an impression. When the kids were younger, I couldn't get to meetings at 7:00. No matter, the kids had to be dropped off. And I needed to make sure that, especially with my son in a special needs environment, you have to regulate the person. And I just said, look,
there's no way.
I'd love to, but I can't. And I know I speak from a place of privilege at an executive level. But even in those environments, people don't understand that as an executive, there are other pressures equally so. At all levels, there are those pressures. And there's always somebody in charge, somebody who wants you to do something. But I said, you know what? This is a moment of truth then, where actually, is this the environment where I can actually thrive if I cannot actually do this? So yes, we go through moments of being overwhelmed, but can we double click
on why
how
you find yourself there?
So I'm overwhelmed because, you know what, maybe I don't have the best car, maybe I don't earn gazillions amounts of money,
maybe I don't know how to prioritize.
Maybe I don't know how to prioritize. Maybe I actually don't know what I'm doing. Maybe actually I'm
saying yes to too many things.
Double click on that and work and see how best you can unravel that situation.
How do you deal with teams or execution partners?
Yes,
because you work in an ecosystem,
right?
How do you deal with them not pulling their weight, or not doing their jobs? And I know that in the relationship you and I had, there was a sense a long time ago, long time ago, where there was, marketing is letting us down. We've got fantastic products,
but
we've got great service, but those execution partners are letting us down.
Yes.
How do you deal with that in a way that kind of sets you up and your team to do well, but invites the others and points out to the others what they ought to take responsibility for and shift?
Yes. And that really is, in fact, that's your most brilliant skill that you're asking me. I'm laughing. But I think the whole thing, Nonto, is really having, my team often says they've experienced the full keyboard dealing with me. There's the Dracula sound. There's the happy let's go dance sound. And I think it's important because you can't behave the same when the house is warm and when the house is burning down. they're two different scenarios, and you've got to show up with that urgency and a tool set to deal with those kinds of environments. So for me, when I'm being let down, I'm very clear and very candid about the fact that that as a team, we're letting ourselves down, and that we actually need to shape up to a better set of outcomes that we're looking at.
Yeah.
And external parties also have to understand that they're not shaping up. And it's about actually, I always say to people, especially the ones who feel that they don't like confrontation and then I'm like, you're living your life as a lie. Can I ask you to tell the truth for once? And tell the truth because it is your job to tell the truth about what has happened here. So the narrative that goes in my mind is this truth telling.
Let's not lie to each other.
Let's not lie to each other. You didn't do this, and you didn't do it well. How do we then progress from here? And maybe we've spoken about this several times. Is it time for us to shake hands and go, what do you want us to do in this set of circumstances? But I cannot, because I've been given this role. It's not about Angela. It's about me representing the business and everybody in it. I cannot go there and now start lying about the fact that there was no performance. That's not fair. That's not fair on the people that I have to lead and people that rely on me to be making the right decisions for the business. So for me, it's really about having those conversations.
Yeah.
And note this, the conversation.
Yeah.
It's not a screaming match. If we get to that, it's unfortunate. But it is really about sitting down with another person and saying, actually, truth be told, this is actually not quite the way that it should go.
How do you deal with people then who are not? So in my role, I talk about this idea which frustrates me.
Yes.
When the team talks about, I didn't want to throw you under the bus. So you're like, yes, what happened? Where are we? Is it going to take 7 days? Is it taking a month? Is the water boiling?
Yes.
Did somebody forget to even or arrange the kettle?
Right.
What is going on?
Yes.
And your whole thing, I love it, where you say, actually, can you just live your life truthfully?
Just tell the truth.
I love that. Let's just tell the truth. And then you find there are people in your team, or in my team I have found, who will come after the meeting, like, just to tell you the truth, I didn't want to throw them under the bus.
Oh, my word.
Like, how do you...
No, but I think that, people are always managing dynamics, right? And I think it's freeing. I typically have sessions before an important meeting like that. I have a pre-meeting with my team where all the facts have to be put on the table. And if we're in the wrong, let's say that we're in the wrong. I don't want an impression to be made of me that isn't helpful to us solving the problem. Because in me being painted as with my team as we're doing all things right and we're not necessarily helping the situation. But also painting the other partners as them doing everything right is not helping the situation either. So my whole thing is really about let's understand what it is that we're trying to do. And it's so important that because you know how much when we start eating away at that, that's where we talk about, are we an ethical organization or not? Yeah. Because we're not willing to admit to what we know is true of the facts that we've got and what we should have done. I'd rather we deal that and really be in the dwang for that and come out of that than the other one. I think managing impressions is the least of my concerns. What is of concern to me is, are we doing what is sustainably okay for the organization and for us to have a meaningful partnership with whoever we work with so that ultimately we get to the desired outcomes, And if I'm in trouble in that particular moment, let it be so. And if the other party is, well, they must take it. We must deal with it. And I found that when we've told each other those truths, and really it is the right partnership that we're in, then we all step up. And it's better for the relationship than not having mentioned it at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last question.
Yes.
What is corporate politics to Angela?
Sheesh.
And how does Angela navigate those?
Corporate politics.
Yeah.
It's socialization. It's how people do things around here that actually is not obvious. You've got to learn it. You've got to be patient with it. And when you now come into that space and you're new, that's the stuff that you are meant to be paying attention to. It's not so much, proving how much you know the job. It's really understanding how things are being done around the place where you're at and knowing who the decision makers are, who are the people that actually are not going to help you or can help you. All of that forms part of the environment. And then the politicking, which is what we say happens, is really when all of that is in play. And then you're not in the know, and therefore you think it's a politics. It really is a socialization. And when you get it and you understand it, you're like, okay, then the work I have to do is not just the widget work. It's a work of building the relationships. Am I good at it? I think I'm terrible at it. But it's something I'm very aware of. And I recognize that when sometimes I'm not able to navigate certain parts, it's because I haven't actually done the work of the dealing with the socialization.
Yeah. I usually say that in Zulu you say, "Kunenduna yendawo."
Yes.
And then I'm like, well, they are visibly placed, labeled, izinduna.
Yes.
And then there are the invisible ones who are not holding the title in the official sense, but hold the influence. And if you miss that, some of what you might achieve, not all of it, some of it, may be limited.
So true. So true. Because, and I think that is so important, because leaders are not necessarily the ones right at the top. It's across the board. And that's why you've got to actually just give yourself time to understand what's going on in the place.
And don't be in denial.
And don't be in denial. And actually, sometimes it's about being humble and just figuring out what everyone's doing and how they're doing. And before you kind of assert yourself, just try and navigate, try and understand what's happening in the place. I found that to be so useful. It's like, when I started working, we were told, instead of going in a room and, just talking away, rather keep quiet and just observe what's going on. There'll be an opportunity for you, if it is necessary, for you to contribute. And sometimes it's very hard to do that, because we want to show that we can do the stuff, that the people didn't make a mistake by
it's my
hiring
title,
us.
it's my position.
Exactly.
Who must activate in that province without me knowing?
Exactly. And sometimes you take too long, maybe showing up to say, actually, I've done the analysis work now, I can show. It's a combination. One has to kind of, it's a very tricky balance, because sometimes you can be observing so much that you're not playing your role. And so people think, we can just do as we like. But sometimes you can be so in your role that you forget to actually observe the other stuff, which is not helpful. So I think it's a healthy balance of wearing that cloak you've got, very intentionally so, but being in the moment to understand and that you've got to actually understand this environment that you're in. On
that note, that's cheers to failure.
Oh
with
my
Angela.
word.